Hey, thanks for tuning in. And Lars has joined me again. Uh, we are going to talk about the astrology of Lord of the Rings. Thanks, Lars, for joining. It's always good to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, good to be here.
So, Lord of the Rings, the JRR Tolkien magic is. Uh, I don't think it needs an introduction. So, I think I have been a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. So I'm sure you have been a good fan as well. I'm sure there are many people, many astrologers who are fans of Lord of the Rings. So it's always good to relate to a specific character in a specific movie or a play with specific planets or planetary positions, and it's fun to work with, or it's fun to do and mess around with characters of you know fiction or fantasy or something like that. So
Yes.
in that way, I think Lord of the Rings offers a lot of scope to mess around with our astrological nerdiness. So
It does, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's fun to do this in general. It's just fun, and sometimes it can help you be a better astrologer, better reader, and that sort of a thing.
sure.
And it's also not it's best if we approach it non-linearly, if we don't try to say that this planet is this person and this sign is this person only. It's more like a configuration kind of thing. And so to give an example is anybody with a good understanding of astrology would probably liken Sauron, the Lord of Darkness, would liken him to Saturn, right? He's a very Saturnic figure, especially in the movies, the way they make him look, just in all this black armor, very, very big and so on. And he's kind of like Saturn in Aquarius in a way as well, because he's
Sure.
marshaling armies and doing all this stuff, to conquer. He's not just some hermit hiding in a cave or in a forest or whatever. But I actually think of Sauron when he's debilitated. I actually think of it as Sun in Libra opposing Saturn retrograde in Aries or something like this, because you've got this eye, which is very much the sun, right?
Watching.
Yeah, but it's fallen, right? It's in a dejected state. It's fallen. It's held captive in its own land, actually. And then Saturn, which represents Sauron, like we were talking about, or could represent Sauron. In Aries, that's at least in the movies, the way they portrayed it, right? This fiery, sunken land, that's just kind of dry and decrepit and dark. And, he's confined to that tower. This is a very Saturnic kind of symbolism. And he's frustrated, right? Saturn and Aries, extreme frustration, constantly searching for the ring, so he can become whole again, complete again, or whatever. So that's that's kind of just in there, we've already looked at, 3 different signs, a couple different planets, right? Retrogradation, fallen. And so but this gives us I think this paints a pretty good portrait of it. And we could even add, is he in the 12th house? Is he in the 8th house? Where is this Sun-Saturn opposition happening? I could see it 12-6 or something like that for sure. So we do have all of this kind of stuff that we can look at.
So I think you just already started. I was worried at where to start and how to start, but you already started with Sauron. So let's just move on from there. Where Sauron was actually he was an ally for the men, elves, and all the good people. But Sauron suddenly turned. Saruman. Saruman was the ally.
Saruman,
Saruman was earlier ally for everyone. who are considered to be good in
Yeah, he was
Lord of
one
the
of the five.
Yeah, he was one of the five wizards, the greatest of the five wizards, the leader of all the five wizards, and he was the ally once who finally succumbed to greediness and wealth or whatever it may be, and
he becomes. As I remember it, right? It's like that seeing stone that he has. It's like a crystal ball.
Exactly.
The idea that like Sauron perhaps like reached through and influenced him.
Yes.
And Saruman's interesting because it's almost like Saruman thinks he's doing. I don't know. It's almost like Saruman thinks he's doing his own bidding in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sauron's bidding. Yeah.
Yeah, he portrays as if he's working for Sauron, but Saruman has his own vested interests in whatever he does. So I don't know how we will. The planetary configurations for Saruman is very difficult, but I would pose Rahu first there, and I would directly put Jupiter in Capricorn, and Rahu is probably there with Jupiter in Capricorn. So that's one good thing, because one who is considered to be a leader of the five great wizards is turning out to be a bad influence, and he's turning out to be enemies for the all good races of Middle Earth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jupiter in Capricorn, maybe retrograde.
Yeah.
With the North Node Rahu, because Saruman is definitely seeking that power. Sorry, I'm just silencing my phone. He's seeking that power, and Jupiter is very much the planet of power in many respects. Like a lot of people might not think about Jupiter that way, but if you think about Jupiter, right, it's so expansive and abundant, and physically it's like a second sun. It's like a solar system unto itself. Its moons are huge. They're like planets actually, and it exerts a strong gravitational pull upon the sun itself. So Jupiter really is very much about power. That's why there's abundant success wherever Jupiter is in a chart, or that's kind of traditionally what we might think about with Jupiter on a basic level. There's going to be some abundant success, for better or worse, right? It's not necessarily good, but Saruman, like he's seeking. He's formerly wise, but now he's no longer wise. Jupiter fallen, but he's also seeking that Jupiter power now outside of himself, outside of his own domain, right? Jupiter dejected with Rahu. He's seeking it elsewhere. He's seeking it in something that's foreign to his nature as a Jupiterian being.
Sure.
Right? And longer behaving like a wizard.
Exactly. And the expansiveness that you are talking about, I think the retrograde factor that you added was probably very wise, because he was expanding, but his expansion is he expanded very largely and very swiftly in Isengard, as they project in the movies. He kind of started creating orcs and urukhais by himself, which Sauron was earlier doing. So he was doing everything, and he was expanding, and he was all set to kind of destroy the forest of Fangorn, which kind of at the end of the day helped the Entmotes to kind of rise again and find their own power, as Gandalf says. So on the other hand, just like Rahu's greed, he succumbed to the greed of what Rahu has to offer, and he kind of forgot his Jupiterian nature, even though he expanded, but his expansion was completely negative due to the influence of Rahu. So we are talking or conversing as if that Saruman really had Rahu and Jupiter in Capricorn, but it's not that. But we are just trying to put in some astrology, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So
cool. I think we should definitely talk about Gandalf.
Gandalf.
Symbolism of Gandalf is, when he's Gandalf the Grey, he's very much to me like Jupiter in Sagittarius. And later on too, this still fits later on because he ends up riding a white horse, right? And Sagittarius is the horseman, you know, but it's also, of course, the philosopher and the wizard, the wizened one, right? So he's very much like the perfect.
It's almost like Sun and Jupiter conjunction is Sagittarius trining Mars in Aries, because sorry.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, because he rides the he rides Miaris. The horse's name, I think it's Miaris. One of those Miaris. Okay. So Shadowfax. Shadowfax is what it is. So he rides Shadowfax, which is the greatest of horses or the lord of horses. And Ashwini Nakshatra. Right. Ashwini Nakshatra depicts horse. And Sagittarius as a sign as well, we know what it depicts. So it's almost like a Jupiter's Sun conjunction in Sagittarius trining Mars in early Aries within the first 13 degrees where Ashwini Nakshatra falls.
Wow, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and he's also very like martial, you know, like he fights with a sword and a staff.
Yeah.
He charge into battle. He's not like your I don't know, maybe a more popular version of a wizard that's like always just casting spells and stuff. Like he's rarely using magic in that sort of cliche manner, right? He's
more of a warrior.
Yeah, he's like a warrior, and so very interesting symbolism. And I sort of feel like when he becomes Gandalf the White, it's almost like Jupiter in Cancer.
Okay.
Exalted Jupiter in that way. Yeah. Like it's just like a shift. It's like the D9 position of
maybe D9 or D12, yeah.
Or D12, yeah. And so Gandalf is kind of like, you know, he's unfaltering in many respects. You know, it's like there's one part where he's almost tempted to take the ring, right? But like his wisdom and goodness prevails, and he's like, no, I could not take it because I'd become more terrible than you can imagine.
Sure.
You know, just consume me. And so like it kind of leads us to like, in that sense, like what is the ring? Can we even represent the ring through astrological symbolism? You know, I mean, we could say it's Saturn because, you know, it's a ring, right? And that's a very Saturnian thing. Absolutely. We might say it's Rahu Ketu-esque in a sense because it just amplifies power, but it also diminishes. Like Ketu, it can like suck away your life force, like Gollum, right?
Yeah, I think it's like Saturn, Ketu, and probably Pluto.
Yeah, maybe Pluto, but I think the ring is... Yeah, Pluto probably actually fits the best in a way, but I don't know. I sort of feel like the ring itself can't easily be represented by astrology. It's really interesting. All the characters can, you know, like if we go from Gandalf to, you know, like Aragorn, for example, there's these like two halves of him, right? Strider, when he's like a ranger kind of. He's like this, you know, this hidden warrior that goes stealthily from town to town, and that's a much more Saturn Mars kind of energy to me, you know, like
as a strider it's Saturn and Mars for sure, but once he transforms into Aragorn, I think it's Sun and Mars. So
when he becomes the king again, the return of the king, you know, he's definitely becoming the sun.
Sure.
You know, hands down, the solar archetype there, and you know, the tree of Gondor,
the white tree,
kind of the moon. Yeah, it's like the moon.
White tree of Gondor.
Right. So we definitely get him switching from like sort of this Saturn Mars in Capricorn, maybe like trine or opposing Jupiter or something like that. You know, like to more of a Sun Jupiter, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I guess in maybe Aries or Leo, because he's a king, right?
I think I would just fit in Aragon with Sun and Mars in Aries, or Sun trine Mars in, Aries Leo trine. So that's
sure. That's something like this, yeah.
That's where it
Yeah, because
fits
he
in.
really becomes a different he really becomes like a different person in many respects.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, he wears many shades in three parts. In the first part, he's more of a normal man who has terrific skills. But in the second part, he kind of comes out and shows that he has real skills. And there, I think his Mars is more dominant than the Sun. But in the third part, I think the Sun really takes off because that's the return of the king. So he kind of suddenly transforms into a person what he's actually is. So Sun kind of takes over there and
yeah,
suppresses the Martian qualities. Of course, he still fights in the movie. He's still a warrior, but he's a king. So Sun has to be there on
yes,
the top.
absolutely, yeah. Especially that last scene in the third movie.
Exactly.
Man, I'm getting chills, like where they're outside the gate
Yeah.
giving a speech, and it's just like, wow, this is like so epic, so insanely epic.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, yeah, I want to mention a couple others that came to mind real briefly. Is I feel like all of Hobbiton, the Shire, that's
Yeah.
Taurus.
Let's talk
That's
about
very
Shire.
Moon,
Let's talk about
Venus, and
Shire.
Taurus.
Yeah, Moon
Moon,
and
Venus,
Venus
and
in
Taurus.
Taurus, exactly. Moon, Venus, and Taurus, and Mercury in Virgo. So it's a flawless place
Yeah.
where it's a flawless place where you can rest, chill out. So in the initial part of the movie, and I think it's there in the book as well. So the hobbits are quite content to ignore and quite content to be ignored as well. So that is
Yep.
basically the quality of Moon and Venus in Taurus, with all the perfections and the beauty that they have, which is represented by Mercury in Virgo. So the beautiful plantations, gardening, farming, and very
Yeah, and it's more
uninterrupted.
Rohini Nakshatra
Yeah,
too, like
exactly.
in
Abundance of
Taurus.
resources.
Yeah, it's not Kritika. They're not
Sure.
Kritika types. So yeah, so I think it's fun to think about that. And I would think too, it's like a waning moon because the waning moon is more
Yeah.
introverted, private. It's not going to be, it's not going to want to deal with the outside world.
Exactly.
And on that note too, then we have the main Hobbit characters. I think that Samwise is very Taurus. He's very loyal, very simple, sturdy fellow. That the actor they chose for him in the movies looks very Taurus to me. Like he's just got that kind of build. But then Frodo is very very Pisces, in my opinion, because Pisces, one of the meanings of it being the 12th sign and being related to the 12th house
Yeah, I
is
think the one another reason why he can be Pisces is the shade of uncertainty that he kind of portrays and carries throughout the uh, series of
yes,
Lord of the
the
Rings.
two yeah, the two fishes, right? Like he's always flirting with the ring.
Yeah,
He's always like going back and forth like these two fishes kind of. And but the other reason I was going to say is that Pisces does symbolize collective crisis, and
oh,
his assumption of the duty to carry the ring to Mordor is like a huge self-sacrifice. It's also a very K2 thing in a sense, K2 Pisces, 12th house sort of thing, because it's
burden.
because it's doing things on this impersonal level, whereas Virgo is like the servant, um, that you encounter in everyday life. Pisces is the servant to like some great worldwide sort of cause, at least potentially, right? So I think
Sure.
that his mission and his character is very, very Piscean. And, whether that's Sun in Pisces, Moon in Pisces, K2 in Pisces, I don't know, could be any one of those, could be Pisces Lagna, it's not, not set in stone there, just kind of the general sort of Pisces vibe.
Yeah,
And K2 is very much about self-sacrifice as well. You'll find it in a lot of charts where, people are willing to make big sacrifices and stuff and kind of reject themselves for something greater. Sometimes negatively too, of course. And again, that comes with, it comes with the territory where, like, he can sacrifice himself to destroy the ring once and for all, or he can sacrifice himself to the ring and become a slave of the ring itself and the power that it holds and all of that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, the other two hobbits, they're kind of like Gemini. They're kind of like siblings. They're like best friend sibling types. They have that banter.
I really like to associate Moon, Mercury, and Venus in Gemini, or even Pisces, because whatever they do kind of turns out to be, especially Peregrine too, whatever he does turns out to be a tragedy or whatever it may be, and turns comical or hilarious, and that needs some kind of trouble to Mercury. But I think Gemini also makes sense because they are very thick friends, and they do trouble together, but Peregrine too kind of finds himself at the receiving end from Gandalf throughout the movie. So it's very hilarious, but I think Gemini is probably a good bet that I would also agree with.
Yeah, they just feel very Gemini to me for sure. And they have this kind of goofy, willy-nilly attitude. They don't take things seriously enough.
Yeah.
They're always kind of like, they have this banter. So it's a very mercurial Gemini kind of vibe. They're almost like twins or like a brother or two brothers or something, even though they're just, I guess, best friends. But yeah, that's interesting. And then I thought of another really fascinating association. I was just reading more about Bharani Nakshatra the other day, and it just popped in my head that in some way, who kills the Witch King?
Which king of
the Witch King? The woman who kills him.
Arwen.
No, it's not Arwen.
Sorry, it's Cameron. I think it's Lady Galadriel.
No, it's not Galadriel. That's the elf. It's the woman from from Rohan or whatever it's called, the place with the horse.
Okay. From Rohan. Yeah, you mean the Witch King, the Ringwraith, the leader of the Ringwraith, which no man can kill, but the woman from Rohan will actually kill. Yeah. Okay. Her name. Eowyn.
Eowyn. Yeah. Eowyn. She's like, I am no man, and so like, she kills him, and I just feel like that's like a very Bharani Nakshatra kind of thing to me, Bharani Nakshatra.
Venus-Mars conjunction in Aries.
yeah, Venus-Mars conjunction in Aries, and its symbol is the yoni.
Yeah,
right? The female
yoni,
organ, sure. and it very much holds the keys to, life and death is one of the things that Bharani is supposed to deal with, like the transition between the worlds and that kind of a thing. And there's a very hidden aspect to Bharani Nakshatra. It's kind of a mysterious nakshatra in many respects. And so it's, so I think that's, I don't know. I just kind of thought, like, I think there are other nakshatras you could associate her with, or other significators, but this Bharani theme sort of jumped out at me when thinking about how she kills the witch.
The only, or maybe two nakshatras that I can associate with, one is Uttarashara Nakshatra, and the other is probably Ardra Nakshatra. But Ardra might be a less, less fitting. But Ardra is all about destroying the illusions and what is not there. So the Ringwraith cannot be destroyed by a man, and she's a woman who can be an Ardra woman who kind of, or she may, or maybe she has some D9 Ardra position. She takes a specific, at a specific time she turns out to be an Ardra woman or something like that. Maybe her moon is an Ardra in Gemini. So that could be
sure. Well, and that's very much Gemini too, like wearing two masks, right? Like being this woman disguising herself, like that could be kind of a Gemini Mercury Saturn thing as well. Having those two sides, those two faces, in order to accomplish what she needs to accomplish. So, I thought that was cool, though. I mean, like, and admittedly, I'm still learning the nakshatras better. It's sort of been like the one part of astrology that's kind of just taking me a long time. So But I was thinking, like when we were talking about Gandalf as Jupiter, Sun in what's it called, Sagittarius, right? I don't necessarily think I don't know that they're going to be in Mula Nakshatra, right?
Could be a Mula Nakshatra as well, because there is a saying in Tamil language that a man who is born in Mula Nakshatra is as good as a king. So, or as good as a person who can actually be an advisor to king. And what Gandalf is advisor to all the kings, like Lord of Elrond and
Cool.
Rohan.
True.
So,
but what is the nakshatra that follows Mula again?
Mula, Purvashada, and Uttarashada.
Purvashad, that's right. And one of those is associated with Indra, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm not sure which one is. I think Uttarashada is associated with Indra. One moment.
It doesn't really matter. I was just sort of thinking out loud there. I think, we're kind of meandering now at this point. But yeah, it's fun it's just fun to consider all this stuff, and it does give us, again, more insight into really using astrology and really doing readings. If you came upon a chart where, like going back to our first example, if you came upon a chart that had that really challenging Saturn in Aries opposing the Sun in Libra, what might that tell you about the person and their life? It might tell you that the person is going to, fall from a high position.
Sure.
Right. It might tell you that they could fall from a high position, or that they might be always struggling for power and recognition, but never quite receiving it. They might be, very impatient, depleted, incomplete, or destitute, things like that. I mean, not to be too negative, right? But if you found somebody that had like Sun Jupiter in Mula Nakshatra in Sagittarius, that might be a Gandalf type person, somebody who had like a crushingly powerful sense of wisdom and leadership, and
Sure.
Was able to provide like very good counsel and have very deep and profound insights into the stuff of life, and maybe even like a sense of prophecy and strong intuition, things like that. So or who like associates with kings and is a counselor, and kings in this day and age is more like, powerful individuals, people that have a lot of power and so on. So, you can kind of translate this stuff into like an actual reading, an actual situation.
But what you just said kind of takes me to another opening. You just said looking out for something, kingship or leadership or something, or desiring for something, but finally that does not happen. And I think it directly relates to Lord Denethor, who is the steward of Gondor. He is very careful about the fact that Gondor needs no king, and Gondor is his own. So he thinks that his stewardship is good enough to save Gondor, and he cannot digest the fact that the actual ruler of Gondor, who is Aragorn, has returned, and he kind of gives into his madness, or greed, or a desire that he should not probably wish. So I think that kind of gives me it kind of gives me an indication that he might be a good depiction of Saturn, Sun, and Moon in Scorpio. So that could probably
that makes sense. Yeah, I was thinking Saturn in Leo, just at the very basic level, because it's like the servant thinks he's the king.
Sure. Yeah, that also makes maybe Sun and Moon in Scorpio and squaring Saturn in Leo is probably a very good example, or that is a good way to kind of look at it's a good astrological symbolism.
Yeah, we have a situation in which a servant thinks they are sufficient to replace a king, and like people don't realize that there is something to the the divine nature or the divine right of kings. That like a true king, his role was always to be like a mediator between heaven and earth, basically. Like he represented God on earth in a sense, or like the gods collectively, so as above so below, just as there's a king in heaven, there needs to be a king on earth, kind of a deal. So in that sense, like Lord of the Rings is really a very traditionalist mythology and story, because our key examples there is you have this this symbolism of like the sun needs to return to Gondor, which is speak. It's just there's no king, there's no vivifying life force anymore.
Sure.
And in Sanskrit, I think it was the name of this kind of like the term for this kind of king was Chakravartin.
Chakravarti.
Yeah, something like that. So. Anyway, yeah, kind of getting off topic. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else. I
think I just wanted to talk about Legolas and Gimli. So
okay.
I think those are the two important
two manifestations of Mars there to me. Mars in Sagittarius is the archer, hands down. But like Gimli is much more like Mars in Capricorn, or something like this,
Yeah, he's selfless, he's fearless, but I think he has a little bit of a comical side in him, where we have to fit in Mercury and Mars, where we need to have Venus and Mars for Legolas. It will be Mercury and Mars for Gimli, where there is a silent competition between both of them, which actually is it is an inner little story inside the huge Lord of the Rings itself, which makes those two characters very important, and also necessary to the grip of the actual story.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there's more that could be said about those characters. There's more that could be said about all of this,
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think we'll be here for forever and a day if we want to go through every part of Lord of the Rings and try to figure it out astrologically. So
that's what I was also thinking. I just wanted to touch upon the major characters. I think we just did that. I think we did the major characters. So
yeah. So and of course, just as an end note too, you have like the 9 ring wraiths, right? Those are the 9 grahas.
9 grahas.
And,
And maybe we didn't talk about Boromir, and Boromir is someone who succumbed to greed. Maybe he has a lot of Jyeshta Nakshatra influence in him, because Jyeshta Nakshatra is the fine line between the need and the greed. He knew what is his need. His need was probably Aragorn, but he chose greed, which is the ring, and he paid he paid it with his life. So that's probably so that's how I think that's the Jyeshta Nakshatra manifestation in there. So I think
he's a complex character for sure. He's another case of a servant who kind of misunderstands his place, because his father has kind of planted these
ideas
in him and his brother Faramir.
Faramir is actually wise, and
brother, but he redeems himself.
Faramir is wise, actually. So
Faramir is different, but Boromir does redeem himself before he dies.
Before he dies, yes.
He's also got this Saturnic character to him for sure. He's very just like he's got kind of a depressive air to him, and again, he's a servant who sort of misunderstands his place, unfortunately.
Sure.
Cool.
Okay, that probably brings us towards the end of this endless discussion, which is a potentially endless discussion, but we're just here. So heavenlybranches.com is where you can find Lars and his works. So thank you so much, Lars.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man. All right, see ya.